Sorry for the interruption, Mr.
Okay, that was no, that's all right. That was the next thing I was going to ask about. Okay. I see it's past 1:30, so I will call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody, and ask if councillors have any pecuniary interest to disclose. So hearing none, let the record show that there was no pecuniary interest declared. I will ask for a motion then to approve the agenda. And just note to everybody. Okay. Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Just a notice to everybody that this particular meeting is as advertised solely for the purpose of considering the budget for 2021. So we don't have any other items on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
As the mover of the agenda, I noticed at the last meeting we talked about having a public meeting on the pool issue and a vote sooner than later. And I think rather than wait until March the 15th to then have council discuss when that meeting will take place, it's a fairly simple discussion, and I would like to add that discussion and how we would communicate that to our ratepayers. I obviously don't want to discuss the fors and against or the pool issue itself, but I think we can save ourselves 2 weeks of sitting around to then discuss when we might have a meeting. So that would just push the ball down the court a little further. So I would ask that at some point towards the end of the meeting, we have time. I don't think this meeting is going to be 3.5 hours, that we have a short discussion on that. So I'd like to add that to the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, by virtue of the nature of a special meeting, we cannot add items that are outside the scope of the meeting. And I certainly understand what your intent is, but the other problem I would see with that is that we have to consider some, whether we want to make some special arrangements for that meeting, and we don't have any particular date to suggest at this moment. So I'm not sure how council would deal with the matter, even if today, even if we wanted to. But we can certainly, come up with a suggested proposal, and we can always, because that meeting is also a special meeting, it can also be called. Doesn't require a resolution of council at a meeting to set it. So unfortunately, we can't do that tonight.
Well,
or this afternoon.
Mr. Mayor, if I might interject, we can do it. I've checked with the clerk, and we under our procedural bylaw, with the majority of a council's approval, we could add this to the agenda. And again, I'm only simply asking that we not debate it. We just say, fine, let's have a date in March, towards the end of March, or whenever we decide as a council, and also then say, well, how will we communicate this to the electorate? So we can make that decision today and get a 2-week head start on whatever we're going to do. And we can do it procedurally, as per our clerk that I asked a couple hours ago. What we have to do is suspend our procedural bylaw and add this to the agenda with the majority will of council. So we would put that to a vote. Thank you.
Well, are you then? Are you then making a motion that we suspend the that we suspend our procedure bylaw?
Yes, I am, and add what I wanted to be added to the agenda.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second Councillor Woods.
Is there any discussion about the motion?
Yes, Councillor Gorm Matthews here. My only objection to that is it's not on the agenda, and this is one of the things that people get frustrated with council about is they see an agenda, they see what they think is going to be happening in a meeting, and they make a decision on whether or not to attend that meeting or to listen in on a meeting based on what they see is on the agenda that pertains to them. And, you know, in the past, I didn't normally attend meetings, but my husband did, and that was one of his number one pet peeves was that you would think something's not on agenda, it was safe not to go to a meeting, and then it gets added to an agenda after, you know, the meeting's begun, and you've missed out on something that you're interested in hearing. You know, I don't see the issue of waiting 2 weeks and having it on the agenda and having a discussion at that point. You know, I just think it's unfair, it's untransparent to the people that read the agendas to sneak things into it that haven't been advertised on it. That's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments concerning this?
Mr. Mayor, I would just say in response, and I appreciate that, Councillor Gorham Matthews. I suppose if this, in my mind, was a discussion about the pool or the merits or anything like that, but simply many meetings are held by virtue of the mayor and the CAO clerk setting the meeting, as is today's meeting. Today's special meeting was set by the two of them. When I was in the office on Friday, the CAO said, well, when do you think this meeting is going to occur? I said, well, I thought you and the mayor would set that. And she said, no, that has to be a decision of council. So based on that conversation is the reason that I brought it forward. And I don't think there's anyone in the municipality that would say, oh, they made a date for which is well into the future, or not tomorrow or anything. It's well into the future, 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever. And they're going to communicate it to us this way as being substantive enough that people think we're hiding anything. We've made that decision that we want the meeting, and I'm just trying to expedite it for the sake of having it done, by the way, before any funding decision comes down, which is the decision that council's made. So we can vote whatever way we want to vote, but I think it's the proper thing to do. So I guess we'll call a vote, or the mayor will. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, just one comment. I don't see 2 weeks making a big difference in such a significant project. So I'll wait for the vote. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
okay, thank you. Go ahead.
To me, I don't see it as a big deal. Like, I don't think we'd be doing anything wrong. Like Councillor Lamb says, if we could just get the date set. Like, we're not going to debate anything else about the pool. It would just be to try and get a date set for this meeting and let people know how we're going to inform them of when the meeting is going to be.
Okay, thank you. As I said earlier, my principal concern is that we have not discussed a date and don't have a proposal in front of us. So I'm not quite sure how we would arrive at this, not having the ability to consider, you know, other meetings that we may have and the availability of the people and that sort of thing. So normally what we would do for something like this is we would suggest the date to councillors, make sure everybody's okay with it, which, by the way, is what happened with respect to today's meeting, and then it gets officially called. So that's my reservation. I'm sorry, but I'm not in a position to suggest the date. So anyway, If there's no further discussion, we'll call the question on the motion. It's really an amendment, so because it involves suspending the procedure bylaw for the duration of this meeting, and then adding the item that Councillor Lamb requested to the agenda. Madam Clerk, I'll call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gorham-Matthews?
No.
Councillor Lamb?
Yes.
Councillor McEwen?
No.
Councillor Woods?
Yes.
Mayor Comrie?
No. All right, the amendment is defeated. Now, are we prepared to accept the motion as without the amendment as originally moved? Any objection? All right, thank you. We have an agenda. Next item is to move into committee of the whole. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move, Councilor McEwen.
Thank you.
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Is there any discussion about this? We are at according to my clock, 1:43 p.m. Hearing no objection, we will move into committee of the whole. And once again, I will just remind everybody that the purpose of committee of the whole is to permit discussion about a particular item without having a motion on the floor. And you'll notice that there isn't a motion on the floor at the moment. Following our usual practice for these items, the proposal is to go through the staff report that has been provided to us, that I trust everyone has a copy of, and work through the items in the order that they are presented there, with perhaps one exception. If everyone is agreeable to this, it's my understanding, and I didn't catch the names of everybody who's here, but it's my understanding that we do have folks from the library staff and the library board with us, and if you wish, we could talk about the library's operating budget, which is a separate item at the end first, if that's a request of council. On the other hand, if you're prepared to wait till it comes up in the scheme of things, I notice it's right at the end of the agenda. So, as a courtesy, I'm willing to move that up to the beginning if you'd like to talk about that first. By the way, who do we have? I'm sorry, who do we have from the library? Kathy Lamb, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm the Vice Chair of the Library Board, and the Chair of the Board, Peggy Whale, is not able to attend today. And I believe that our new CEO librarian, Eva Fincham, is on the line as well.
Okay, thank you. You are there, Eva?
I am.
Sorry, I should have asked that at the beginning. I apologize, but I just want to make sure. All right, well, let's do it this way. The beginning. What I'm going to do is ask. We have a sort of a report at the beginning that summarizes the general situation. It has been prepared by our treasurer, Pat Allen. So I will ask Pat to just go through that in the beginning, and then we can take some questions around her general statements that we made, and then we will start looking at the schedules, and we could start first with the operating budgets are there, and we could go to Schedule D and look at, or Appendix D and look at the library budget first. If everybody okay with that approach? Okay, hearing no objection. Let me turn it over to you, Pat, and give us your introduction, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council and staff and members of the public. I was actually going to start with the revenues, so page 2 of 20 of the report. I wanted to point out that MPAC was heading into a current value assessment phase-in last year. That didn't happen, so I just wanted to point out that that whole process is on hold. I was in touch with MPAC as early as last week, and they're still waiting for direction from the Minister of Finance. So I'm not sure where we stand with the 4-year phase-in on assessment revalues that go up. We would normally see that increased assessment value, therefore revenues over a 4-year period, but I'm not sure where that's going right now. So I'll let everybody know when we hear back from MPAC. So the only thing in the revenues that has been added is new builds. So I have estimate of 0.7% of new builds revenue in the revenue line. That's all that I've adjusted for. I just want to point out that we did receive some safe restart funding last year. We still have $20,000 to be received, and we did receive it in January of 2021. We still have the balance of the FedNor and Trillium grant for the library extension. FedNor we should be getting in March. Trillium, we still have some paperwork to do, and I reached out to our representative because they wanted to do a photo op media and a grand opening, which would be great, but I asked, how do we do this when we're under lockdown, the businesses are closed, and you can't have more than 10 people together? So I just heard that they're willing just to do a press release, so I'll forward that information on to the individuals. So we don't have to wait. We could probably do something on a smaller scale. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund has been increased by about $21,800 from last year. The gas tax revenue is increased slightly, up $2,500 from last year. Our Infrastructure Ontario Fund is sitting at $50,000, no change from last year. We've been low in our community programs because of the closures of the hall and the rentals and the thrift shop. So we do have a corresponding decrease in expenses as well. The salaries have been adjusted for CPI, which was 0.7%, comparing to 1.7 and 2.5 in the past 2 previous years. There's a slight increase in salaries, mainly due to a full year of staff, whereas in the past. Did someone have a question?
No, it's just someone joining the meeting, and unfortunately we get these announcements as people from Momentum as people join.
Okay, I'll just keep going, and if there's any questions or if you think of something, you can always send me an email at a later date. MPAC fees, a slight decrease. The Ontario Provincial Police levies, there's a slight decrease. DSAB, a slight decrease. Belvedere Home, slight decrease. Ambulance levy, there is a slight increase. We did get hit with an additional amount of about $19,000 last year. I'm not sure if that will happen again this year. Our reserve balance is approximately $1,080,000 at the end of the year. I've suggested some contributions to and deductions from, but again, that's up for debate. The annual debt repayment limit, we're sitting at $608,000 to date. Principal and interest, we're at $235,000. That includes borrowings for the tandem snowplow, the garage renovation, the Bunny Trail construction and culvert, Hanning and Balsam Roads. So we have a capacity of $373,000. I don't know if you want to switch to capital or if there's any questions, or we could switch to capital. We're sitting at a capital draft budget of $1,626,320. I want to point out I've made a small error in the fire department. I should have added $4,000 in there for fire truck number 1.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, well, yes, go ahead.
Can we ask questions on the first 2 pages?
Yes, that was my intention. I'm sorry, I was going to say to our treasurer, before we get into the details of the budget, let's take questions on the first couple of pages. So please proceed. If you have a question, Councilor Lime.
First, I have a few actually. So under the revenue, Pat, maybe I'm just misunderstanding. It says approximately 6% under 2020 budget, which I would read that this year's budget our revenue is being projected as 6% less. But I don't get what unfavorable means at the end. Like, are you trying to say that we ended up 6% under budget in our revenues in 2020? Is that what you're trying to say there?
No, I was comparing 2021 to 2020 budget.
Okay, so our revenue in 2021 is 6%, is projected to be 6% less.
Less than the budget from 2020, correct?
Okay, and we'll get into that in the details, I guess, as we go through them. The provincial restart funding program, you say we got 20,000. Is that I keep getting all these different programs mixed up? That's not 20,000 of the 200,000 we received, is it?
No, we did receive 232,300, and then they announced an additional 20,000. We just got that in January of 2021. So that was in addition to.
Okay. Okay, and the expenses again. So I'm reading that it's 1% over. Our expenses are 1% over what they were in 2020.
Right.
So
the budget.
What do you expect, or do you have any guesstimate as to what our deficit or surplus is going to be for 2020?
I'm working with the auditors right now, so I should have those numbers shortly. But I'm guessing about a $200,000 surplus, pretty much in line with that additional money we got for the startup funding.
Okay, thank you. My last question is, when you come down to debt, I understand it as far as saying capacity for future borrowing is $373,000, but I don't get the next part where it says potential additional borrowings $1,030,000. Does that mean? What does that mean? I don't get that context.
Sure. So if we go back to the revenue page at the very bottom, just to make it look a little bit better from a revenue line perspective, I included borrowings for municipal office renovations, $700,000, just for discussion purposes. The Bulkley Bridge repairs of $85,000. If it's a go, if these are a go, we would potentially have to borrow. Whitestone Lake Road, $162,420. Bunny Trail, $82,900. That is a total of $1,030,320. So if for again discussion purposes, if we had to borrow for that, it would cost us an additional between $78,000 and $80,000 in annual principal and interest repayments. So comparing that to we have room of $373,000.
Okay.
So if we potentially had to borrow for those three, that would cost us around $78,000 per year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And could you just review quickly again what those projects were again that are included in that $78,000?
The municipal office renovation is $700,000.
Right.
Bothview Bridge repairs, $85,000.
Mm-hmm.
Whitestone Lake Road, $162,420. and Bunny Trail, $82,900. Those are all in the capital report later on. But again, just for example, if we had to borrow for the larger projects, if they are approved, that's approximately what that would cost us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Other questions about what we've covered so far?
Councilman McEwen, Mr. Mayor, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on page 2, Pat, I guess it's the third last bullet there, the balance of federal provincial funding for the library expansion, 52,330, will be received in 2021. Is that the last grant that the board came to us for to inform us that they were looking for a last start / Trillium grant to finish off the library, the $50,000, or is that just the expansion?
There was an additional $52,000 applied to Trillium for the Resilient Community Fund. That won't be known until probably this month of 2021. This amount is the last bit because we got $150,000 from FedNor and $150 from Trillium, but they only gave you about 75%. They hold back a certain amount until your project is finished. So once you complete the final reporting, you get the balance. So that's the balance of the $300,000 from last year. We got most of it, but not all of it. The additional 52 is for something different. It's another application under the Resilient Community Fund under Trillium.
So that's in 2021 we're hoping for?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, I guess that's sufficient for now. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, Madam Treasurer, do we know if we're for sure that we're going to get that 52,330, or?
We don't. It's supposed to be this month towards the end with the last notice that I got where they will announce the results, so it's nowhere right now.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments on what we've discussed so far? All right then. If we were to follow through just the material that is in the package in front of us, we would be moving then on to the operating expense budget, which is in attachment A, and there are a number of pages there. And then we would move on to the capital budget. So my suggestion earlier was that we might move, since the library folks are with us, to attachment. It is attachment D, which is the last 2 pages of your package, pages 19 and 20, and you can see there the income and expenditures for the library for 2020 and the proposed budget for 2021. So I don't know, Kathy or Eva, would one of you like to just take us through this quickly?
Eva, how about you do this? You're the new CEO librarian.
Okay. Just one moment. So if you go to page 19, this is our expenses broken down by quarter for 2020, and then what our budget was for 2020. And there's a few things to note here. Our income was quite a bit lower in some cases. A lot of that is our major fundraisers couldn't happen this year because of COVID. But if you look way down at the bottom, there's a senior community grant. That was for $25,000. So that was for the new sign. So that kind of made all of our numbers be a little bit funny because that was money in that we received, but then we paid it out right away to the municipality. So it looks like our income is quite a bit higher, but that was money in and out. So I did just want to point that out in case anybody's wondering why our income was quite a bit higher than we projected it to be. It was that $25,000. Now, for our budget proposal this year, we are not having quite as many staff members in as we normally would, just because of COVID. So it is a reduced staff for this year. We also have a number of items that usually the municipality would have on their operating budget as opposed to our operating budget. So that also has put our ask up a little bit, just for a change of bookkeeping. So things like our heating, for example. Normally that would be on a separate line by the municipality, and this year it's for us. In addition, with the larger building, our heating costs are estimated to be quite a bit higher. I think those are the major things I wanted to mention was the increased costs that we have added on to us. Just on paper, they were always there. It's just on paper now. They are on our budget instead. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. So you can see from the bottom line of page 19, you can see that the expense budget has for 21 is projected to go up about 6.25% from what it was in 2020, which is, I think, understandable given the increased size of the building and the fixed costs that one would expect. So, are there questions or comments from councillors?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Kieran, if I could ask Eva one, please.
Sure.
Thanks, Eva, for attending and getting yourself up to speed so fast and giving us this presented amount of information. It's super. On the 2021 budget proposal, right-hand side on page 19 there, the sign at $5,000, should that be $25,000? Or am I thinking of a different sign? I'm thinking of the electronic sign.
So that is for the electronic sign. We have received a grant for $25,000 towards it, which we have transferred over to the municipality. After speaking to Dave Creaser, he recommended that we add some more money to go towards the sign because it will likely cost more than $25,000. It hasn't gone out to tender yet, though.
Okay, so this $5,000 isn't the $25,000. Okay, that's just an additional $5,000 that's in the expenses. Thanks. Yeah.
Yes,
well,
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Lamb. Yeah. In terms of the downloads from the library, and I'm, of course, on the library board as the council rep, yeah, there are several things, but things that weren't sort of mentioned were, I think, around $3,000 for insurance has been transferred now over to this budget from the municipal budget. Propane, I think, was being paid by the municipality. I think that's transferred over. So there's a number of things which, I'm in support of because Pat's doing a good job of aligning costs and revenues and expenses to the proper cost center. So it's really just a cleanup of our accounts, and but those things are in there that weren't in there before. So when you take out the download or the things coming from the municipality to the library, the actual increase is minimal. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And other questions? So I have a question. There is an item under expenses called miscellaneous, which shows up as the total is $26,000, but there's a $25,000 item that occurred in Q4. Is that related to that fine as well? Is that where it is, or is that something else?
Yes, that's where the fine is. So
Okay, so
$25,000 of that is the fine.
Okay, all right, thank you. And where do things like Councillor Lamb mentioned insurance, and I can see where I guess I can see where the heat is. No, actually I can't. Where are those?
So
where do those appear?
The insurance isn't on ours. I think it's on the total.
No, Mr. Mayor, Pat, we pay for the insurance. It's just on our side we show this line item of the request of funds, but we pay for the insurance here.
Okay, so it's not in fact showing up on the library's budget then.
No, it's part of the municipal budget, as is their ask for funding. So it's just, I'm just grouping the costs. I'm trying to group the costs on our side by facility.
Okay, all right. No problem. Thank you. Again, are there other questions? Well, not hearing any. Thank you, folks, for that. Sorry?
Hi, sorry, I put my phone on mute. It's Kathy Lamb. I just want to say that Eva has done a good job preparing this budget under the fact that she's new in her position, and we're dealing with COVID, and we don't know when we're open, we don't know when we're closed, based on what we get from the government, and the fact that it's a brand new build, and there's so many operational concerns. So thanks to Eva for her hard work in preparing this budget. Thank you.
All right, thank you indeed. With that, if you're agreeable, perhaps we could go back then to and just continue working our way through the budget. Starting back on page 5, attachment A, we can review the expenses that we have here for general government. You can see on that page there is approximately a 9% decrease in the 2021 budget from the 2020 approved budget, and actually, anyway, so let's go through that. Are there again, if Madam Treasurer, if you have any comments about this that you want to make just on that particular page before we start, go ahead. If not, we'll just start taking questions anybody has.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just point out that the decrease is pretty much due to the paying off of this building. So we had a loan of $120,619 that was paid semi-annually. And so this complex is now paid off. We've paid the debt. That's the biggest reason for the decrease.
Yes, that, by the way, is item 16156 in your in the ledger. If you, I'm sorry, 16155. Is it a 5 or a 6? My gosh, it's a 5.
5.
It's a pretty fine print here. I'm trying to read, but anyway. So that's where that item is that Pat has referred to. Are there any questions or comments about this page?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, a few.
Go ahead.
Line up. I guess my first comment is, Pat, I don't know whether on the 15th when this comes out you can make this print smaller, but man, I have a lot of difficulty. I've got flashlights here and rulers and whatever just to read the fine print of this. It's really, really, really
Leaving
small.
the meeting.
And I think I had mentioned that at the last time. It's very difficult. So anyway, I'm not going to quote the numbers because I really can't see them. But postage, we budgeted $12,000 last year. or 12.8. We spent over 17, and we're back to 13. So I remember, I think a meeting or two ago, we decided we were going to send the newsletters out as normal, and the taxes go out. So I guess my question is, how could we spend 17 last year and only budget 13 this year?
We had an additional mailing last year for the landfill cards.
Ah, okay, good. Thank you. It's good to answer these questions. Okay, and then just write that down. My next question is to do with, just hold on. Oh, computer supplies. Again, 22,000 was budgeted. We spent 19,700, and then suddenly we're going to 25, which is $5,000 extra. And I just, you know, why is that going up 25%?
We've been trying to upgrade the computers in the office one by one every year, but this year we have 2 scheduled for upgrades because they're very old.
Okay, so that's the computers, or that's supplies for the, like, I don't get how you, or is
leaving
that
the meeting.
It's, well, actually it's both. It's support and computers.
on Hearthstone?
Okay. My last one is the donations. Last year was 74, and we pretty much, well, we gave 75. I think there was one request come in later. But this year we've suddenly gone to 8,900. How was that 80? How did we arrive at 8,900 for this year?
So I had a request from Councillor Gora Matthews to add the Georgian Bay Biosphere Benthic monitoring for 1,400. But I think in further discussions, there's 2. There's the Whitestone Conservation Association that was donated at 1,100 last year, and they'd asked for 3 years. I think what I'm going to do is take them out of the donations and move it down into a separate category. But it's an additional 1,400 as per request.
Okay, so when do we, I remember the Biosphere, there was a time in the past, and I think the mayor will remember it, where we had some discussions on this, and I thought begged out because we weren't part of the Biosphere or something. So when do we debate that whole issue? Now or
on March
in the
15th, I have a report prepared for the donation.
Okay, thank you. That
but I think what I'll do is I'll take these 2 out and move it down to a separate line, but I'll leave it here for now just so there's a placeholder, and we'll discuss it on the 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I'll try and make this bigger. Yes, I will.
Thank you. Did I say smaller, by the way?
Sorry?
Did I say smaller? My wife came down and big letters saying bigger, not smaller.
Bigger.
I must have said smaller. Sorry.
That's all right. We understood what you meant.
Joining the meeting.
If I can just respond quickly to this matter about the Biosphere. The item that we had discussed previously was membership in the Biosphere, which candidly I believe there are good reasons why we should take that out, but that isn't actually in the budget at the moment. What this is a service that they provide on a cost recovery or partial cost recovery basis to provide the training and assistance with the Benthic monitoring that you'll recall Dennis Morrison had requested on behalf of Whitestone Conservation Association. And part of that, just to be clear, part of that is something that we approved last year. And when we approved it last year, it came as a request for a donation, but we said we approved it on a 3-year basis. So actually last year, it would normally carry through the $1,150, I think it is, would carry over automatically into the budget for this year because we approved a 3-year involvement. Councillor Gorham Matthews, though, at a recent meeting had suggested that we actually budget for another, and that would cost us additional money, but budget for to do the same thing for another one of the lakes, and that isn't in. I'm sorry. I guess Pat said it is in the budget, and that's what caused the number to go up. Am I interpreting that correctly, Pat?
Yes, so that's the 1,400 increase.
Okay. All right. So that's where we, just so everybody understands, that's where we are with that one. Are there more questions on page 5? If not, we could move to page 6, which is the expenses related to the protection to persons and property, and it starts with the fire department on that page, and it continues onto the top of page 7 with other protection, which is basically the, our policing and bylaw enforcement and some other things. So go ahead with your questions on any of those.
I have one, Mr. Mayor. Just hold on, I got to find the line again here. Oh yeah, helipad snow plowing. We didn't budget anything last year, and suddenly, of course, it's in. Why didn't we budget for the helipad snow plowing last year? I guess is my question. Now next year next year we have it in at 6,000. So I didn't think this year was a particularly big snow year. So if it cost us 9,000 last year, why are we only budgeting 6,000 this year? So that's a couple of questions.
Okay, so I don't know if Chief Whitman or the CAO can answer, but what, or Pat, what?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. We get an orange grant for $3,500 that's in the revenue side to help with the snow plowing. So the difference has always been about 6,000 that has not been budgeted for. I budgeted for it this year. I put that in because it has traditionally not been budgeted for, but I wanted to put it in this year to show it.
Okay, but was
so in other words,
okay, I get it. Thank you.
The 9,592 was the total cost of the snow plowing, but we did get something like 3,000 of that from.
Correct.
From,
we get 35 from Orange.
3,500. Yes, right.
So the difference has not been historically budgeted for, but I wanted to put it in there this year.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Mr. Mayor, more of a comment.
Sure.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
More of a comment than questions, but Chief Whitman has kept his numbers pretty reasonable with last year, if not even better, the 4% reduction, so he's to be thanked for that. I noticed some items are up and down, like hydro for Station 1, and then it goes down to being the same again for Station 2 and for Station 1 underneath there, or minor purchases, and those things are staying pretty close to the previous budget, so I don't see too much to ask questions on this. I see some of the safety things have gone up a little bit, this and that. I suppose that's new folks coming in, volunteering, and all that kind of stuff too. So anyway, overall, I think it's pretty well on target for us. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments? You'll notice that there is also a new budget item in the chart this time. It's 16-216, which is, it says fire permits. That's the the charge for the online permitting software, which is in the process of being implemented as we speak. So, in case anybody wondered where that came from. Is there anything under the other protection category that is on the top of page 7.
Well, look, the emergency plan. Could someone talk about it? Like, I know what the emergency plan is, but we budgeted $3,000 last year. We spent $7,600. Now we're budgeting $6,000. What are we doing? Like, the emergency plan is the emergency plan, isn't it? I know we have one or two exercises that I don't know are going on with COVID now or not. But what's the $6,000 for?
I can answer that, Mr. Merritt.
Go ahead, please.
Henry. Under emergency plan includes the costs of our CEMC, Kathy Whitman. And under normal circumstances, she does a certain amount of work a week or per month, when things are quiet. With the pandemic last year, she spent a lot more time in meetings and, working on protocols and at emergency management meetings as well as CEMC meetings. So, and we pay her by the hour based on the work that she does. So that's why it's extremely high as an actual for 2020. I think it's going to be much lower this year. I actually have to have a bit of a conversation with Kathy. Probably 6,000 is a bit high for the draft budget, and that's something that Pat and I should talk about with Kathy. But to your question, Councillor Lamb, that's why the actual is higher than we expected.
Thank you.
Yes, perhaps I can just mention to folks that at the beginning of the pandemic, the CEMCs from the 7 West Parry Sound municipalities were meeting on a weekly basis with representatives of, the ambulance and the OPP and so on. They were holding meetings at the very beginning weekly, and we in our municipality have an emergency management group, which exists when there is a state of emergency, and we were meeting also once a week to get updates from the other group and provide feedback and talk about communications and those kinds of things. So as things progressed into the summer, the frequency of those meetings declined a bit, but it was part of our emergency plan is that those meetings happen and they kicked into high gear at the beginning. So that's a fair chunk of that. We're now meeting every couple of weeks instead of every week, and sometimes it might be 3 weeks depending on how much new information there is. So anyway, that's why that's high right now, of course. Anything else about emergency management? So can we then move on to the building department? Any comments or questions about those? About a 1% increase projected for 2021. Sounds like there isn't. Oh, sorry.
Quick question. Pat, I noticed, and I guess it's because we're nonprofit or whatever, that we never showed depreciation of like trucks and things like that. Like the building inspector has a truck. Am I missing something? Is depreciation over on some line I've missed, or do we just don't depreciate our assets like trucks and other things?
We don't show depreciation during the budgeting process. It's handled at the year-end process where they show the amortization. So it's booked on the year-end by our auditors, but we don't budget for depreciation and amortization.
But we do at the end of the year? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So in the financial statements, it is reflected at that point.
Okay.
Well, and that does coincide with the regulations for the reporting requirements for municipalities. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The argument for that being that it's not a real expense, it's a paper expense. It really affects the balance sheet, not the
Yeah, that's correct.
income statement. There's no cash going out the door to cover it. But okay, I didn't hear anything about building department. Are we okay with that? Okay, let's move on to page 8, which is transportation services. That's our roads, and David Creaser is with us. Perhaps, David, I don't know if there are things that you want to highlight in your operating budget.
Yes,
we're going to come back to you on the capital side, but that'll be in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. From year to year, it looks like that we won't be a whole lot different moving from one to the other. There was, if going halfway down, moving down the charts, our wages, I guess we should start there. Wages looks like we're going to be planning for a full year with full-time staff. This year, we did have some people off last year, and so moving and filling of positions, including myself. And this year we hope to have everybody for the whole year. We're going to ask for a little bump in training, as we have to train some of our staff. We've got the radio tower license, which I know that'll include some capital budget as well for radios. Moving down, we have another item that pops out is our sand and salt services. We did have last year to produce the sand was about 35, and then there was additional for salt, and then the cover, that tarping of the sand. When this was produced, we were hoping to save some sand this year because it looked like a fairly favorable year. December wasn't too hard on us. Neither was January, but February's been awful challenging for our winter maintenance, and this actually may have to go up a little bit to reflect the use of that, our secondary pile, our backup pile for winter sand. So that may have to have a slight increase. As well, we had our roadside brushing, I guess, which was budgeted for 12, and it was tendered. It came back at 24, and it was tendered actually for 2 years. So I believe in 2019 there was no roadside brushing was done. So in 2020 we had 2 years worth of brushing in the 1 year. So we're back down to a single year of roadside brushing, back down to 12,000 for that item as well. Going down as well, we hope to have the maintenance in better shape for our equipment. The bigger outstanding items will hopefully have been looked after, the majority of them being tires and predictable things such as that, hopefully looked after. So our numbers are a little more predictable with our maintenance for our equipment. I think that would tidy up most of our budget here from 1 year to the next. Do we have any questions?
Okay. Yes.
So, David, a few things. You said the roadside brushing, the 24 is for 2 years?
Correct.
Okay, so that's why it's okay. So 12,000. You said it was tendered for 2 years, so that's going to be the actual cost this year. Will be 12,000, right?
It's out for tender again, and we hope to get back to our 12,000, yes, or close to thereabouts.
And you're saying the 35,000 for sanding should be probably up above that, and probably that's what you'll increase, or you'll increase that number for the March 15th budget.
Yes,
I would think.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to save that pile like we thought we could.
Okay.
That backup pile.
Okay. So, goods and miscellaneous goods and services, 5,000. We spent 2,800, 2,870, and we want 10,000. So what's that all about?
Miscellaneous goods and services. Let's see.
It's line sugar. It's 16,395, I think is what it says. 5,000, 2,870 spent. Variance of 2,130, and you put 10,000 in.
Yes, for that item we had, I believe we had some blades and things we were looking to get for our trucks. We did try out one set of blades for our plow trucks. We put on a different set which seemed to keep the buildup of material off the road. So we didn't get that rutting, which does shake you around the road a bit when you get the wheel rutting. And then as well as the grader blades and shoes. It looks like we're going to need some more of those. We're getting low on those items, which are wear items, I guess we call them.
Okay, so all these items in the budget, you have, I assume, Madam CAO, have backup, right, with specific things like David just said, like blades or something, right? It's not all verbal, is it?
We do have an inventory of what we need. Yeah, we did go through all those item by item.
No, okay, I'm asking our CAO. Like, we're asking questions and David's saying blades. I can understand that, but is there anything in your budget preparation where you say, okay, it's gone to 10,000, dot point blades, dot point whatever, right? Or training, for instance, it's gone to 10,000 and we only spent 3 last year. I don't want to, prolong the meeting by saying, what are your training plans, right? But do they exist? Have we actually said, here's the training that we're going to put people through, or do we just up it to 10,000? Because I heard you say we want to have more training, right? In other words, is there paper backup to all this?
If that question is to me, Councillor Lamb, through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer is yes. When Pat and I sat down with David to go over the budget, David had the justification for his request for the operating budget, and we questioned him on it, the same way you're questioning. So if council is looking for the detail of those increases or decreases, that could be supplied.
Okay, thank you. I only have 2 or 3 more. I'll get through it here. Freightliner snowplow, 16,404.2. This Freightliner snowplow, nothing was budgeted. We spent 6,500, and now we want 10 or 15,000? 10,000, I guess. 10. What's Freightliner snowplow?
We did purchase a new snowplow last year, and we did have to get some work done on that plow as worked the season. Being that it's a snowplow, it's inherently in rough conditions, abusive conditions, and repairs are required on the fly as we go. And we do have to set aside a line item for maintenance to that new addition to our fleet.
Okay, it just seems to me sometimes like we just put in 3,500 bucks and we'll put in 10 grand, right? Like we only spent 6,500 last year. Why would we go to 10 grand this year, right? So we don't have to belabor the point.
No, that's a fair point. Last year we picked it up mid-season. This year will be the whole season. It's a similar item to other units.
But and again, I don't want to. Just got 2 more. You go down to the grader maintenance. It's 15,400. We budgeted 15,400. We spent over 25,000 on the grader maintenance. And this year we've got, again, I got to look here. I think that's 15 or 16, right? So if we spent 25 on grader maintenance last year, what makes us think we're only going to spend 16 next year when the grader is a year older?
Excellent point. What I know is that coming from the unit, I don't know of any major issues until they happen. I understand we had an articulation problem last year, and then this year we got some issues with our table. But beyond that, I don't think there's anything outstanding. I'm not aware of. So it's hard for me to guess high when I don't know what it's going to be.
Okay.
So typical issues is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at just typical issues right now.
Okay. Well, typical issues added up to $6,500 last year, not $10,000. Anyway, the Rhodes Grant is the last one. We spent $79,300 of $81,310. I think last year we did not increase the Rhodes Grant, and if I remember correctly, I would request, Madam CAO, that we put a 3% increase through for the Rhodes Grant, and I guess we'll debate that on March the 15th, as we will debate the Biosphere or other things. So I would request that, please. Thank you.
Can I answer Councillor Lamb's question on the miscellaneous goods and services? It's 10,000 because Dave did add 5,000 for a pit survey.
Okay, well there you go. That's on our quarry, our pit, right? Is that what you're thinking? Did you say pit?
Yes, pit survey.
Okay, thank you. What's a pit survey? I gotta ask. That's a survey of the pit, right? like you're talking a surveyor in, right?
This year, I believe we're going to do a feasibility review on our existing pit to gather more information for council to see where we are at with it and what our options are with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there other?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Joe Matthew.
Yeah.
One question I had was on the pit. This is the pit in the Farley Road. Is that correct? The sand pit in there by the
correct.
Ball Diamond. Okay. So we're looking at extending the life of a pit in there and opening it up for personal use, where we have just 5,000 for a lot of years, I guess. Is that correct? Is something I thought. It doesn't seem to me like we've used that pit for very much. And I guess our hopes would be down the road to make a very good use out of that property in there as a pit. Is that correct?
My hope is, absolutely, we're trying to work with gathering as much information as we can to provide to council for options moving forward. And I don't believe at this point we have that information. Not in a meaningful manner anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Other than that, they're pretty self-explanatory. Sounds like you've got substantiation for your expenses, so thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions related to transportation before we move on? Okay, hearing none. Environmental services on the next page, 9. We have it looks like a slight 2.45% increase going from 2020 to 2021.
Mr. Mayor, I got a couple, Councillor Woods.
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
The first one I noticed was, I'm trying to read this here, sorry. The compaction and cover York landfill. We budgeted $17,340. We spent $23,885. Only budgeting $17,687 for this year. If we spent $23,885, should we not look at spending the same amount if it's just compaction and cover?
If I may I answer this one,
Go ahead, please, David. Yeah.
I understand from last year there was a lot of movement of material and changing of the shapes of the cell. That was completed under my predecessor, Brian Sheridan. A lot of that work is not required to be duplicated for this year. So the number did come back down.
Okay. Another quick question pertaining to that one. The compaction, the cover, this is material that we buy to cover up the garbage in the dumps when we put it all back?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. A lot of that material is that material is provided by us in-house. It's labor and equipment required to place the cover and move the garbage in place to shape the cell, as well as drainage, ensure we have proper, adequate drainage from stormwater. We can get we don't have any water trapped into the garbage, which would cause us issues with leaching of our leachate out the base of our landfill. So we need to keep our shape and compaction and cover. That's based on rental equipment, labor, and the cover, the materials is provided in-house by the municipality for different means. Could be ditching or from our pit.
Okay. York Landfill Recycling. We budgeted 30,000. We spent 41, and we're budgeting 35. That's just for our compactors for the recycling to get rid of it.
Yes, the removal of our so our costs for our recycling programs, which is hauling of the bins over to Bracebridge, and the processing of our recycling as well.
Okay. With the changes that we've made at the landfills, and we're trying to get everybody to recycle everything, wouldn't it make sense that costs would at least be the same as what we actually spent, or even they'd obviously go up? I would see it goes up every year, but I think you cut yourself short at 35.
And I believe these numbers that came in, these final numbers, I think I'll have to review to see exactly where they are. They look a little bit higher than what I initially reviewed, so I'll have to review those numbers again for March 15th.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's on the internet for the Yorkville landfill. 1929. Is that internet for the debit machine and such? Seems like a fair bit of money there just to process the deposits.
Yes, I can answer that through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor McEwen, yes, that is the Wi-Fi.
Okay.
If I may as well, that dollar amount supports the cameras as well.
Okay. All right. I just
so it's internet and cameras.
Yeah, we had an actual of 839, and then we're budgeting for 19. So I guess 839 was only part year or something last year. So okay. All right. I've got a little kind of personal queries, but I don't think there's anything outstanding. Thank you.
Okay, are there any others about environmental services? All right, let's move on to page 10 then. At the top there is the health services section. The levy from the health unit. you can see is it is in at what the actual for 2021 at the actual for 2020, and the ambulance levy, which already came up, that's we did have that additional levy that occurred right at the end of the year, but because of COVID-19, but it is it's been increased a bit, so the overall increase is 2.3%. Any questions about those? We don't control them, of course, but we did get, as far as the ambulance levy is concerned, we did get some assurances, and I think you heard them, councillors, from the director of the service, that they would endeavor not to have a repeat of what happened in 2020. So hopefully these are just normal sort of operating cost increases. And there is then a section on the cemetery expenses, a slight decrease in total, and social and family services, a slight decrease in 2.42% decrease from over 2020. Any questions about those?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods, a quick one.
Go ahead.
When it comes to the cemeteries and the grass cutting, I understand, how much they cost, what we spend, what we budget for, no problem, but the difference between Home Cemetery, Maple Island Cemetery, and Whitestone Cemetery, it says grass cutting for Maple Island and Whitestone, and wages/grass cutting for Fairholme. Is there a difference there?
Who can answer that?
Sorry, could you repeat? The grass cutting is split for over the 3 cemeteries, and it's contracted. It's L&K maintenance.
I'm just asking why on Maple Island and Whitestone it just says grass cutting, where Fairholme it says wages.
Oh, sorry, that's a mistake. It should just say grass cutting. I'll fix that.
Oh, okay. No problem. Thank you.
So you're not questioning why Fairholme is so much more expensive than the other two. You were just wondering why it said wages.
Yeah, I was just wondering why wages was in there. That's all. I'm not. I understand the same.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this stage?
I just have one quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Grant-Matthews.
Could you just refresh my memory, or maybe I know this and I've just forgotten, what do we pay towards the industrial park for, that we have that levy?
Madam CAO, do you have the answer to that?
I don't. I think I believe it has something to do with the.
We get an invoice from McDougall. Is this for waste, solid waste?
Yeah, it's for the septic services.
Septic services. It's an invoice that we get from McDougall.
And McDougall actually has oversight of the industrial park, even though it's in Carling Township, so they have an industrial park board. But I believe it's directly related to septic, the availability of septic dumping services. And I'm not sure if there's a funding model in terms of percentage. Yeah. Pat would know that. I'm sure there is, but Pat would know what that might be, hopefully. And if not, we can find out for the next meeting.
Yeah.
No, I've asked them for a contract, and no one can seem to find it. It goes back a long, long time.
Mr. Mayor, I can remember when this was $10,000 and years ago, and you really need to check that out because I don't recall that it had to do with septic. It may have had to, but I thought it was something to do with hazardous waste and maybe my mind's going on me, but maybe we could just check that out and come back as to what we're paying for. I thought it had to do with hazardous waste or anyway.
Well, I must admit I didn't know what it was. My understanding is that we do pay to subsidize the lagoon, and the lagoon is the only part of the McDougall waste operation that is close to the industrial park. But if it is related to something like that, then I guess my question is, why is it under social and family services and not under environmental services? Because that seems to me that's where that would belong. Kind of not. It really is completely unrelated to the other two things.
Mr. Mayor, if I can answer, it's Pat. It was there, and I was asked to move it.
By
Brian Sheridan.
He's no longer here.
How about we take Councillor Land's suggestion and find out for sure exactly what it is and why we're paying it then?
I think it is the lagoon, by the way. My memory's coming back. It's got something to do with that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, to join with you, and I remember questioning Brian or someone on that last year or the year before, and I'm pretty well 100% sure it's the lagoon up there. Curling.
Okay. So, are there any more questions about that particular item? Or can we move then to recreation and culture? It's on page 11. Okay, I'm hearing nothing. I'm assuming we're moving to recreation and culture. Any questions about those?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one, the very first page, or the very first line, I should say. Facility wages, budgeted 60, paid 65, and suddenly we're up to 85. So I imagine it's a reallocation from somewhere, but why are we going to 85,000 in wages?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Land, it was 65. It was higher last year because we had 4 summer students instead of 2. And it's higher this year because we have a full complement of staff now, where it was only part year for an individual last year.
Oh, so that's the part-time that we turn into full-time, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, other questions about this particular one?
Oh, yes, I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Just with regards to the internet at the Dunchurch Hall, it was almost $2,200 more than what we budgeted for, and then we go back down to the regular price for 2021. I'm just curious why there's such a jump there for last year.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm Councillor Gore Matthews. We put a booster on the community center last year when we started working out of the community center because of COVID and social distancing. It was discovered that the internet up there was very, very weak. So a one-time expense of a booster, and so that's why it was a little bit higher in the actuals, and it's lower because that's the monthly fee that'll go through for 2021.
Can you tell me what line you're looking at, if you don't mind?
Certainly. It's 16,710.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay, sorry. Yes, I understand. I see exactly what you're saying now. It's because there was a one-time purchase in there. All right. Sorry, go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, I just would ask staff to check with Eva at the library. I know that this came up, and I know we were in the process of looking to convert over to Bell, I think it was, on a new package that, similar to the package that we have at this end of the lake. When we put the new cell tower up on Canning Road, you can get, I think it's 350 gigabytes for $85 or something a month. And we could get two of those modems, if you will, for the price of what we were paying through the other company. So, and that would give us 700 gigabytes. And anyway, so there's a bunch of things happening over at the library with respect to the internet. So, since the Dunchurch is, and quite frankly, the office. So you might check with them. I don't know whether it would be applicable at all, but obviously, the Bell internet system, at least at this end of Whitestone Lake, is super. So just check there to see if there's any synergies that could come in here. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. That's a good comment. Are there anything else on this particular page? So this continues on page 12. We have here there's the Recreation Committee, and there's a public pay telephone lumped in with that. And then we have the after-school program, and then some other, we've got the Seniors Diners Club, we've got Thrift Shop, and then those other miscellaneous items that for the library that we pay for, and that they're all added up there, halfway down the page. So anything on the top half of page 12 I want to ask about?
Yes. Mr. Mayor? Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, the after-school program, and I'm not looking to change the after-school program, but if you look at this, the cost is the budget is $14,000, and I think I saw somewhere else the revenue is $10,000. So if one was to just look at those two numbers, it would say that the after-school program is running at a $4,000 deficit. Of course, plus any staff time to administer it. But I don't think that's the case, because I think there was a article or something that said it's running break even. So isn't there a something coming from DSAP or something that balances this off, or am I missing something here?
Madam CAO? Or Pat?
There is some, when I recalled Judy Mate's report, excuse me, from the last meeting, I'm just looking up. There was, just going to open it up here. So last year, we in revenue from DSAB last year, the 2019-20 program, there was about $7,700 received. And I'll ask our treasurer if that's been accounted for in revenue.
Received for 2020?
The way it was worded in Judy's report is she combined the school year as opposed to the calendar year. So 2019-20, there was an indication of DSAB revenue of $7,705.
So in 2020, there's only 3,988.
What's that? 3,988. What's that?
Revenue from the after school. Oh, sorry, that's revenue from the after school program.
This would be the
That's
DSAT
fees.
contribution that we apply for every year.
My simple question is, if it costs us $14,000, which is here, and we get $10,000 in revenue, whether it's from fees or from DSAP or whatever, then it is costing us $4,000 plus staff time. That's all I want to clarify. Unless I missed something. I don't want to change the program or anything like that. I think it's a good program. I'm just trying to get clarification.
I think, Mr. Mayor, if you could leave that with Pat Allen and I, we'll provide a little bit more information at the next meeting.
Okay, my next question, I think you mentioned the thrift shop. Does that say that is this saying we're going to take $12,000 worth of, we're going to get $12,000 worth of revenue into the thrift shop this year? Because I don't think the thrift shop's going to open this year. I mean, we haven't had a meeting to decide that, but with COVID and variants and into April and May, like what are the chances the thrift shop's going to open to the public in 2021? Doubt it, but so why is the 12,000 there if I got this wrong?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think when the operating budget was first put together, there was some uncertainty, and we may have more certainty now in terms of closures, and of course we haven't talked to the thrift shop. It's just a recognition of what was budgeted in the past. Obviously, there were no actuals for 2020, and the question is, do we budget anything for 2021?
Yeah, and I want to make clear.
You might want to ask the same question in terms of recreation committee programs. We put $10,000 in there, and that's up a little higher under recreation. In 2020, we budgeted $20,500. A very small amount was expended, and that's $1,554. And we dropped $10,000 in this year without really knowing what the rec committee might want to design in terms of COVID-friendly type activities. And we actually haven't had a good conversation with the rec committee. So there's a bit of uncertainty under those line items, but we didn't want to put zero there.
I just want to make clear that the thrift shop hasn't had a meeting to determine whether they're going to open or close. I don't want to, going out that Joe Lamb wants to close the thrift shop or something. That's not the case. I just from my own reckoning of what's happening with these variants and what we're headed to in April and May, I doubt very much we're going to be in operation this year, but I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. Anyway, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lamb, on the revenue side, we have $13,000 budgeted for the thrift shop, and then on the expense side is the corresponding expense. So I just left it in there. It's almost an in and out. Like if nothing happens, it just means that our revenue will be lower, but so will our expenses. But I can take it out. I just didn't want to take it out.
No, that's fine. If you're comfortable, I'm comfortable.
So what I'll do is I'll make that $13,000 so that the revenue and expense will net to zero.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else in recreation and culture? All right then. We're almost done here with the operating budget. We have the planning and development department, and the budget for that has gone down about 11% from in the proposed budget for 2021. Any questions about that one?
So you, Mr. Mayor, the Perry Sound Planning Board will be 5,000 now, not 7,000. Line 16841, that's a recent change.
Did we get confirmation of that?
We got their invoice, so yes.
Oh, okay. That's about as good confirmation as you can get, I guess. All right. Anything else? How about community and economic development?
Mr. Mayor, a question on the tourism orientation destination signs there. I guess that's as set last year, probably pre-COVID by staff and recreation. Is that correct? Or if I remember correctly, though, there was an adjustment made in 2020 to reduce the approved budget amount down to 3,000, if I remember correctly. Are those numbers still fairly suitable in your mind?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, I believe we've been invoiced already for the 2021, and it'll be, we can reflect that. It's just under 2,500. And that's with the reduction in the number of signs. If council recalls, there was a question about the signage and the increasing costs, and there was a discussion about removing the signs from the 400 and Highway 11 corridors. And for a long time, we didn't pay for those. They've now been removed. But we got free advertising for a while until they were able to operationally remove the signs.
Well, that wasn't a bad thing then, because we paid quite a bit for them.
We did,
okay.
And we were about to pay a lot more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, so we do have a little bit of a wrap up here at the end, which gives total capital reserves, municipal expenses, and those kinds of things. Are there any questions on that? And by the way, at the bottom it says 2019. Well, that's the 2019 surplus. That's not the 2020 surplus. We don't know what that is yet, right?
Correct. I'm estimating about 200,000, but I have to get the auditor's confirmation.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So are there any other questions that you would like to ask about the operating budget before we move on to capital? All right. Let's move on to capital. What I was going to suggest with respect to capital as a starter is that we attempt to identify, as we go down the list, we can go down in the order that they're in here, that we try to identify the things that are non-discretionary. Because if you look at them, some of them are things that we need to do, for sure. They're not. And then there's some other ones that are, we'd like to do, but depending on our ability to afford them, we may have to, change the numbers or do something else. So that's my suggestion as we go down, and maybe we could just sort of go through it line by line. So these are the long pages that you have, pages 13 to 16. Let's start with new. If you're okay with that approach, let's start with general government, and we have a new server, a consultant to develop the asset management plan, a facilities assessment, and something for our office phone system. So whoever, I guess it would be our either Pat or our CAO would like to cover those off quickly and tell us whether they're discretionary or not.
Oh, thank you. The new server was a recommendation by our IT consultant, and I don't have a good answer right now as to whether it's discretionary or absolutely necessary. I will certainly reach out to him. He's been doing a lot of upgrades, and we've had some challenges over the years. We seem to be fairly stable now. And I'm assuming he's recommended a new server, possibly because our current server is close to end of life. But that's a question I'll have to answer for you. The consultant cost for the asset management plan. The treasurer could talk to, but that's basically the cost of the awarded RFP to Burnside, and they're working on that asset management plan as we speak with the July 1st. To meet the July 1st deadline. The facilities assessment is actually a 2022 project, and that is to line up with the next level of asset management that's required of the municipality. And that would be hiring a consultant to review all of our buildings. There's a 2011 report that would need to be updated, and they simply look at all of our buildings and consider life cycle, things like the roof and the septic systems and that kind of thing. But that's not a budget item for this year. And the office phone system, we've been having some challenges. We may have solved the problem. I need to do a little bit more research on whether we've actually solved the problem or we've just put a Band-Aid on it. And that was put in there in case we needed to replace the current phone system. Council recall they've had a few email notices about our answering machine, or the ability to pick up messages, and so that's at this time I don't know if it's discretionary, but at the next budget meeting I will have an answer for you. Hopefully that answers your questions on those items.
Okay, thank you very much. Just as we go down, just jump in if you have a question, please.
Mr. Mayor, I have one.
Go ahead.
Now, I don't know, maybe this comes under facilities assessment, but when I looked at all the capital things, I don't see anything in here for handicap accessibility and I think it's the 2025 deadline in our buildings that everyone has to be handicap accessible. And, I think specifically of something like Maple Island, which obviously uses the basement, and I don't know whether it would require an elevator or what we do with Maple Island or whatever. But so, again, I don't know how big of a project this is in terms of all our buildings, and if it's big, why don't we have something in the plan somewhere in terms of what we're doing on that? So can someone speak to the law? I know that the building, that the office building, I think is handicap accessible now. But anyway, could someone speak to that, please?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can jump in, and I don't know if that was you, David, you want to speak to it. So the facilities assessment is for 2022 is meant to capture those questions for the 2025 requirement for AODA. And as you noted, Councillor Lamb, the municipal office as well as the community center is already accessible. Certainly there has to be some discussion about the Maple Island thrift shop and whether it's a good return on investment to make that building accessible, and what that would cost. So we don't have the answer to that, and that's where the facilities assessment would assist the municipality in that discussion.
And certainly the library would be accessible right
now. Oh,
now.
Of course, yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, it's now completely accessible inside and out because of the renovations.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we have a fire truck.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button while I'm driving. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that for the server and the office phone system, I was wondering if the treasurer and CEO had looked under the modernization fund. I noticed that the Village of South River just received a grant to modernize their phone system and such through this modernization grant, and I was just wanted to throw that out there, that perhaps it's something that we could look into in terms of updating our systems and using grants to cover some of the costs.
Thank you. That's that grant application is due March 9th. So, and I was struggling to consider some of the options that they have. So I'll look into that, and that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Under fire department, you'll notice that we have a scheduled replacement of a fire truck in 2025. I don't think we need to spend any time on that today, but just it does give you the fact that there's a 5-year projection here does give you a way of looking forward to see which of these have are planned for the future or where they're planned.
Mr. Mayor, on that, sorry, on the fire truck, when is the point that we should start putting into reserves for that, as opposed to just sort of going along and then in 2025 saying, oops, we got to find $300,000 and let's borrow money for it or whatever, right? So when is the point we start saving for that truck?
Okay, Pat or Michelle?
I can answer that if you wish, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, David.
Yeah, we've been putting away for that for about 8 years now. So there should be quite a bit of money in that pumper account. I'd have to look it up exactly, but...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can answer. The end of 2020, this year anyways, $141,118 is sitting in reserves. Will be sitting in reserves at the end of this year.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Public Works. David, these are your items. Do you want to take us through them?
Certainly, we can start with the Public Works radios. We are looking to have the radios reinstated back into the vehicles. We have a lot of dead zones in the municipalities. I would recommend that this is non-discretionary. We need to be able to communicate with our staff, and we're not looking to have them on their cell phones while they're plowing and carrying out different operations. So this would get us back on a tower. We would be sharing this with the fire on a separate channel. We'd have our own channel, I understand. Bob has been working hard in getting us numbers, and this cost is for the radios themselves, I believe. Everything else is in place just to get the radios in our trucks, and these have to be the updated radios to match our what we have in our tower, the latest technology. Moving on, bridge and structure inspections, that is required, so that is non-discretionary. It's a biannual bridge study that's completed this year and then every other year going forward. I would, moving forward, the structural maintenance, I would also recommend that be non-discretionary. That is a way for us to keep up on our bridges. We have a recommended rehabilitation schedule for bridges that we need to work on and keep up on, and that's produced with our biannual bridge study. So they require us to do different work, and they do project when major work should be done in the future. But there's always a lot of small work that needs to be carried out annually to keep these bridges in good repair and to protect our investment. Moving forward, guide rail for Boundary Spur Road. I believe this has been in the budget years past, and this is a safety concern. We do have a price, a better price of $18,000. I believe that's a more accurate price for what it will cost us. Moving forward, we have guide rail reviewing our municipality. Some of the bigger concerns were along Nelson Collins, Balsam Road, Lads Road bridges for guide rail installation as well. That would be new guide rail installation. Some of that installation was identified under our biannual bridge study. So we would be acting on that as well. Our hazardous tree removal, at this time, we don't have too many in place, so that may be non-discretionary, but they may come up. I think it would be prudent to put some money aside to look at those as they do arise, as we have a large road network. Moving down to the first discretionary item, I would recommend that Public Works pave in front of the sand shed. We were hoping to get the cost of asphalt and pave it ourselves in front of the sand shed. This is a discretionary item. We're able to operate without this, but having a hard surface outside the sand shed will help us clean the area and keep it from filling up with sand and becoming soft and difficult with our equipment. But it is discretionary. The Lake Wawash Cache Task Force, the next item here, that would be a finish of the previous year's project. We never did get finished that project. We came in about $5,000 under budget, and that's about how much work we have left. The water did rise. It did become late in the year, and we were unable to complete that project. And I believe we should complete that project. Moving on to the next line item, which is fuel pumps. We have,
sorry, that one.
Go ahead.
Well, sorry, I was just going to say, but you're telling me that money is carried over from previous years, and I just wondered if we could note if that's the case for any of the other ones that we're talking about as we go, just in case, because it doesn't represent an addition of the a new item, a new addition to the budget. That's all I'm saying.
We would have to do that, and that would have to go back up a few lines to Public Works Miscellaneous. The third one down, the structural maintenance.
Just hold on.
Would be carried over. A good portion of that would be carried over from last year.
Just microwave.
The guide rail for Boundary Spur Road, again, would be largely carried over from last year. Hazardous tree removal. Some of that money was largely carried over from last year. And the Lake Wawash Cache Task Force is $5,000. Again, would be money carried over from last year as well. Moving on to the next item. Fuel pumps. For the fuel pumps, we've reached out to a municipal buying program that would offer us upwards of approximately, it looks like about 10% savings through the municipal buying program. The existing pumps we have right now do require some work. We have questionable age on our pumps, or sorry, our tanks. We're not sure what age they are. We are unable to count or track our volume of fuel out of the current ones, and we also have the short hoses, which are in need of replacement as well as the pumps. A lot of them just need to be replaced. So going into this program, it should at the end of the day, after I believe 2 years, we should be able to pay off these new pumps and update our safety protocol for this operating the fuel pumps. I believe some changes need to be made to make it safer for the operators. So that I would suspect would be I would propose as non-discretionary. Moving on to roads and bridges.
Should
we take a break there? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We can stop at this point and do the ones we've covered so far. Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah. David, last year in the budget we had cameras and a gate for our Rhodes garage. And the gate was not done. It was in the budget, so I'm surprised it suddenly kind of disappeared. So I went by there the other day. There's certainly no new gates on there, but we've got a lot of equipment, as you know, and buildings and things like that. And I just think we should, in the winter it's never closed because we don't have the gates that can close, right? So can we put the gates back in, or how did they not get in there? Why were they taken out?
My understanding is the old gates were the green larger gates. They were taken off, and the new gates are now in place. That's my understanding. The old ones are just set off to the side beside our sand shed. I understand my predecessor had those replaced. And the cameras, I do understand, are in place as well.
Well, maybe I misunderstood. One of the reasons we wanted to put gates up was so that people just couldn't enter the Rhodes garage and at will, right? Or go in and get sand or whatever they wanted to. And I thought we were going to get gates that were, I don't know, I'm going to describe them somewhat like a railway crossing gate that came down or something like that. So if we've replaced the old gates with new gates that look identical to the old ones, they don't open in the winter because of the snow and stuff. So I guess there must have been some big misunderstanding, or maybe I've missed something, because we're certainly no more secure with these gates in the wintertime than we were with the old ones.
I will look into this and get back to you on that. I do apologize not having more information for you at this time, but if I could gather more information and return with the meaningful answer.
My comment, David, is you're doing a very good job, so don't apologize for anything.
So did I also hear you say, David, that that cameras are in operation at the Rhodes garage?
Yes, and they are in operation at the Rhodes garage, York Landfill, and also up at the Alt. And these are well utilized by myself and Tim as well. It certainly helps a lot with our being able to see what's happening at all hours of the day and night, weather-wise. I mean, that's a great tool for us to have. In addition to our road inspections, it's a great tool.
Yeah. Okay, are there other questions about what we've covered so far? I just have a comment. I think hazard tree removal is an operating expense, not a capital expense. And you can see that it's an annual budget item. Hazardous trees are constantly occurring. So I'm not sure. I think this should be in the other budget, to be honest. But anyway.
I agree.
All right, maybe we can move on then if there are no other questions about those and look at the bridge repairs and the other road things which now go down for a whole other page and a half. So David, please carry on.
Okay.
Oakview.
Oakview bridge repairs. This was identified in our biennial bridge study. Upon reviewing this myself, and I did have Bob attend with me, Bob Hughes, and it does look like it needs significant repairs. Down the lower east half of the abutment, the bottom is kicked out, the bottom supporting call it the wall. I'm not sure what you call it. The wall. Anyway, that's kicked out. So supporting right down by the footing, that's kicked right out, and that's because it's deteriorated. So the wood itself is from the cribbing is really rotted. So for us to pull that whole bridge apart to do repairs and to hope that it would go back together, I think might be short-sighted. It is a full load bridge that is used by CN as far as I understand. How it's built, it is built as a full load bridge. There's no load limits on it. It does only service 1 to 2 seasonal residents down that road as far as I understand. The proposal would be $85,000 for 2 2-meter epoxy coated culverts, which would have an approximate estimated life expectancy of 75 years or more, and they would be installed by ourselves, by in-house staff. If we were to contract it out, we assume it would be $130,000. We should look at this, I recommend, as a non-discretionary item. It should be repaired. Once it's done, it should be out of our hair for 75 years. I don't believe there'll be much maintenance down the road in the near future once we do switch this over to culverts. Moving on to Whitestone Lake Road. That is a carryover from last year's work. We did start that last fall, but we did not get it finished. We have a few digouts and rock transitions to put in place, as well as gravel and double surface treatment. The next one, that's a carryover project. The next one would be a completion of Canning Road from Carbahue to the end, or snowplow turnaround, and that would include digouts, gravel, and double surface treatment. And that's a completion of the project we started on Canning. The next 2 line items, which are slurry seal, it's recommended best practices that we slurry seal a year after we double surface treatment. Now this can be pushed back a year if that were, if you're looking for an option for an item to be pushed back. These 2 items here for Balsam Road and Canning Road, slurry seals, they can be pushed back a year. So too much difficulty. The Bunny Trail. This is a portion of the Bunny Trail that has cracks, enough cracking, long true cracking, that I believe that we may see some more breakup if we let it go beyond this year. We should have the crack sealing and slurry sealing paste over top to seal that road up to prevent the road from breaking up to a significant extent. This is ultimately to protect our investment here, and I believe that should be non-discretionary. That should carry on. After that, we've got York Street, which is in a similar situation. It should be crack sealed as well to seal up our cracks. After that, these projects moving forward are 2022 and 2023. Should we stop there?
Yes, if we can. And
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
David, on the concept of the slurry seal, it seemed to me we were informed that it had to be done like 5 to 7 years to get upwards of 10 years out of a road. I don't remember ever hearing the 1 year mark. Maybe that's been there and I just didn't realize it. Is that a new concept, or?
I don't believe it is. I can absolutely gather some background information. It sounds like that would be a good resource that I could share regarding the background behind why it should be and where we should be. 1 year is the typical mark. We did reach out to the contractor as well as the association. There's the Association for Asphalt Cement, which is.
I'm not knocking the need for a slurry seal. It sounds like it's very necessary at a certain point. I just noticed all the way down, even over the next out into 2023. If you add up all the slurry sealing we're going to be doing here, it's like $400,000. So it's it's certainly identified as a very, very necessary item, but I think we have to be careful on how we budget our monies on the slurry sealing. If we can, as long as we do it properly, that's all I'm coming at.
Yes, we do have. This has been identified in the road needs study as well, so we'll have to look at how we apply it. When we apply it, we can get I can pull the information of the road needs study as well. We can present it in a clearer fashion as it relates to the roads that are coming up.
Certainly don't knock the study, because I think we went a lot of years without giving these roads the necessary slurry treatment on top of the hard tops. They were ignored for a very long time, so we kind of got ourselves behind the 8 ball now. So it's just looking at the best practice and the best cost effectiveness moving forward on it.
In this situation, I understand digouts were done, transitions were done. We did have gravel placed on top of it, but we do have a good base. We do have a good sub-base. So the top should, and not a whole lot of heavy traffic. There's no industry, as far as I understand, or pits out in the area. So these roads would benefit from being sealed up for a long time. They're not going to be beat up, and they shouldn't have a whole lot of movement. So they would be well served. Like the slurry seal on, and they will last. Like that's the case. We can look at it on a case-by-case basis. The drivers behind it, there's not a whole lot of damage being done, and we do have a good investment here in play.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your assessment of the overall picture moving out a few years. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lamb.
Go ahead.
To the CAO, will we be discussing at some point the roads needs study formally at council?
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good idea. The road needs study was finalized very late last year, and is obviously being utilized for the purposes of the budget. But I think it would make sense for David to prepare a brief presentation on the road needs study. The executive summary, as you and I discussed today, is very useful. And there's an awful lot of charts and maps in there that it's hard to read unless you know what you're looking for, and they're there for reference purposes. But yes, to make a long story longer, yes, I think that makes sense. And I would ask our Public Works Manager to do that for council.
But so that's a good segue into what I want to talk about. And I do have the roads needs study, and not to preempt talking about it at a future meeting, but the executive summary is very enlightening. And you know, it basically says we've got 103 kilometers of roads, center line of roads, and 78 kilometers of them are gravel, and the rest are either paved or tar and chip and whatever. But what's alarming to me is that the condition improvement needs that were established by visual check in May of 2020 by the firm doing the study, and I take it Brian at the time, looked at all the roads and dig outs and rock removals and improvement requirements, and they came out to $2 million for the hardtop services. And get this, $11 million for our gravel earth road conditions needs were identified. $11 million. And if you look down further, just hold on a second. 17.5% of our hardtop roads were found to be in fair condition. That didn't alarm me. But 23.6% of our gravel roads were found to be in poor condition, okay? And then it basically goes on to say, well, you know, we're going to put this in over the next 10 years, but due to budget constraints, we're not going to go any further than that. And a couple times in here, it's due to budget constraints, right? And I think our gravel roads are in I think by the plan I'm looking at here, we're doing a great disservice to our gravel roads, and we're just pushing a ball down the road of what is a major problem for us in terms of our roads, and not so much our hardtop. And most of these projects, we're talking about hardtop and slurry seal and that kind of stuff. But man, I think we need to put a lot of attention into our gravel, and I really want to see more, or I would request that more go into either reserves or gravel roads, because how do you make up $11 million? And the only way you make it up is a little bit at a time, and a lot more than what we're budgeting here. And I don't know what David has to say there, but these numbers are somewhat, alarming to me. So I won't say any more. But we're putting a patchwork job when it needs a knee surgery or something, right? So anyway, can you comment on that, David?
Wow, that's quite a statement. But that's the reality of it. That really is the reality of it. There's no easy way around it. I know our graders seen a fair bit of abuse because the poor condition of our gravel roads. We do have a fair bit of rock outcropping, and a bit of gravel to go over top would go a long way. But being that we are a fair distance away from our pit, to travel to bring the gravel to us is a burden that we have. That does drive our costs. It's one of the drivers. We're looking at different things. We're looking at gravel plans to put together that we'll present to council to look at, and we can massage those and to an area that we're comfortable with. That being said, we're also looking into the pit, as I talked about, pit assessment, to see where we're at with our pit, to see if we can, there's anything there for us that would help us in this regard, because it is such a large number, and we're going to be having this need for many years to come. This is going to be an ongoing need. And before we look at putting hard surface on many of these roads, if we do in the future, we're going to have to look at having a good base and good sub-base. But gravel is definitely top of mind for myself.
Yeah, because the plan really says that over the next 10 years, we're putting 10% into our gravel roads of what is identified in the study, if you will, and that's alarming to me. We're putting in anyway, I don't want to preempt anymore, but our gravel roads need a lot more money into them over the coming years. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Other comments or questions about this? Just so that I can understand while you're thinking about it, going back to Bulkview Bridge again, the proposal is in fact to replace this with the bridge with 2 culverts. Did I understand that correctly?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so and you mentioned CN. Use it to access the rail line.
That's my understanding, yes.
Because I guess I was looking at it and saying, well, there's only a couple of residences there. They wouldn't be heavy duty users of that particular bridge, but
you're correct.
And we don't charge them anything for that, eh?
No, not at this time. I don't believe we charge them anything for it.
They charge us something for their crossings. So I don't know. Anyway, that's maybe a subject for another day. Okay, so I guess my other question I was going to ask you mentioned that the Whitestone Lake Road wants to carry over from last year. I certainly remember that. Are any other ones carryovers? Like did we have Canning Road, Carbohuey to the end? Was that in last year or not? Or is that new?
No, that's last year. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I remember.
It is the, yeah, that's what I thought.
That's
It is a carryover.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question on the bulk view bridge?
Yeah, sure.
Is that a little section of the old colonization road that comes out of there? Is that what that's all about? Like, it seems like it's a little bit of a private road, but it crosses railway track, or it's in past the railway track. I'm not familiar with it. But I know there was a colonization road that went right through from Shawneville Lake Road at one time through Bulkview and on out there. Is that what we're referring to? Is township maintain a little section of road, or it must be seasonal road, of course? Anyone know?
If I may, it is. I can speak to the fact that it is seasonal. I'm not sure if it is the old colonization road. There's a neighbor there, the first neighbor that's in there, the first ratepayer. He has property somewhere on the other side of that bridge, and he uses that road to access his other property.
Leaving the meeting.
Not entirely sure where it goes.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're looking into it, so kind of a mute question.
Well, there is someone that appears to live in the old train station, and which is right at the very end of the road, and the old train station actually operated. I can remember when it operated. You know, the trains would stop there if necessary, and people could take things off, which of course hasn't happened for a long time. But that, I think, if you go back far enough in history, because it was a real train station, there had to be a way to get to it. Otherwise, there was no point in having a station there, right? And a way to get to it by road. So, but I don't know that anybody much other than those two people, those two households go use it.
And I understand they're both seasonal. Maybe Bob can speak to it, but there's a fire late fall in that old, the upper floor, from what I understand, at the Bulkview, the old train station there.
Okay, well, that's, I guess we don't need to prolong this. Is there anything else under that section before we go on to fleet? All right, let's do fleet. David, if you don't mind.
Under fleet, we have a new utility trailer. It's a 6x10 single axle. The current one we have is not sufficient size for us, and that would be for our summer work and our summer parks. This is, I'd say it's non-discretionary. We absolutely need the proper size. The second one will be our riding mower. Moving on, the current one we have is in poor condition. I don't believe it's going to meet our services that we require for the year. It is a residential mower that's seen a fair bit of work for the condition. So I'd like to see another one. We could look at putting repairs in the existing one we have, but the condition of the deck and the way everything's held together, I don't know how safe it would be for putting students on it. I believe we should get another decent mower, decent mower that we can maintain and ensure that it's going to be suitable for our staff and our parks. Moving on, the sander for our pickup truck, that's for a 1-ton. The current one is not working. We've taken it right out of the truck, so we currently don't have a sander working in the pickup truck. So this would be we'll get us a decent sander for that truck for our winter operations. Moving down the steam jenny, at the time I did not have a lot of information on it when we put this number in. I have this morning, I was able to get it dug out and operating. I'm going to look at doing a repair on it. So this item may come out if I can get it repaired. But I believe we can operate that. in a safe manner if I can get it repaired and buy us a few more years. They tend to last 30 or more years. There's been no change in technology in many, many, many years. They're built in Burke's Falls, but they seam our culverts when we have flooding and their culverts are frozen. So it is an absolute necessity. Moving on to the pressure washer for hot water. That's a hot water pressure washer for Public Works. And that's to remove our winter sand and salt and such. The cold water just won't pull it off. It's a standard feature in most Public Works garages is a hot water pressure washer to clean the equipment, clean our lights and our windows after we come in and keep the salt and sand off and everything operating. Otherwise it builds up and it's fairly abusive and abrasive for our equipment. So that's, I'd like to see that as well if we could. That's been a request of our staff, Public Works staff. Is that a good spot to take questions?
Sure. So with respect to the riding more, can you tell us which areas we mow ourselves and which ones we get done for us by contractors?
To be accurate, I'd have to get back to you on that. I started in September and I didn't take enough time to be specific. I know that we do around the Dundome and we do up at Maple Island and the Commons there. And then we do the ballparks, or the single ballpark there as well. Around there.
So it's only the odd item where we have a contractor then, is that the case, the ones that are farther away, or?
I believe the cemeteries we even are taken care of. Most of the cemeteries are taken care of by contractors.
Yeah. All right. Are there other questions about fleet? So that takes us to the last page, which is landfill, facilities, recreation, and then a couple of biggies at the end. So, let's start again with landfill, if you don't mind, David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would recommend that this would be discretionary. Our first item, convert the sea containers at both York and Alt Street. These sea containers would be proposed that the new sea containers that we bought, I believe, a year or two ago, be converted about half of them into landfill offices, and they would look presentable, and we would insulate the interiors and have the heating system inside as well, and they would seal up and be weather tight for our staff as well. The current sheds we have, they're showing their age. They're built out of wood, and rather than putting money into them, I recommend that we look at improving our sea containers. We can move those in place. The other half of the sea containers would be for storage for maintenance items such as snow blowers and hand tools. So that I would recommend as discretionary. Moving on to facilities, the electronic notice sign at the community center, that is carryover from last year. I believe that number is a little bit of a better number moving forward. The next one would be, I would recommend is discretionary. The 2-inch water line pump for flooding the rink at the Dundome. Previously there was a water pump, a 2-inch water pump that came and fed the Dundome and helped us prepare the initial ice to get our built up, get the ice built up rather than from a garden hose. And I believe when there was, I was told that when we did the parking lot, work on the parking lot there, that line was severed. So this would be about the cost to put another 2-inch line back in to get us back to the corner of the building and get us to flood the rink with a larger volume of water. Moving on to the dock installation at Church Street ramp. This money is, I would describe as non-discretionary. It's a carryover from last year. Putting in these docks, we'd have to look at the accessibility AOADA requirements for the accessibility path leading down to the docks and hardware with anchors and bumpers with a ramp to transition from the land to the dock as well. The next one would be the Grange. That would be discretionary. I recommend that would be discretionary. A new door and shelving to clean up the area. It's an overcrowded building that could use some organizing. That was recommended by our staff. Lead hand recommended that we clean that up. Is that a good place to stop, or should we move on?
Well, maybe do the next two. Because they're kind of in the same general area. There's the sunshade for the beach and the accessibility path.
The sunshade is a carryover from last year. Looking at it, there are some requirements to get a fairly substantial sunshade that will sustain the weather. I've put one up before, and once they were up, they were up. That's with the canvas. They're up with a high tension cable to keep the canvas in place, if that's the route we're looking at. I'm not sure if anyone else has anything else to add to the sunshade.
I can jump in if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
The sunshade has been in the budget for ever since I've been with the municipality, and it was part of one of the recommendations when the beach and the park was configured. Originally, I don't think anybody actually considered what it would look like, although there were some options, and there was $5,000, I think, in the budget last year. And it was obviously completely underfunded when we started doing some research. I haven't heard any discussions recently. I don't know if this is still a priority, but if it is, which is why we've left it in, then we're looking at $25,000. And I base that on talking to David and his experience with these types of structures, and the necessity for them to be weatherproof and some longevity. It's not just an umbrella that you put up and take down at the end of the season. So that's why that's there, and that's why it looks very expensive. And then I'll let David talk about the accessibility path. That's also a carryover from the design and development of the playground.
So just, Mr. Mayor, on the sunshade, while we're on it, the original, when I looked at it, I just put a big question mark because, of course, I'm used to, I think, the sunshade that Michelle was talking about, but it just seems like a lot of money. How big is this thing? Like $25,000.
Leading the meeting.
Is this a?
If I may.
What are we talking? Yeah.
May I step in? This would be suitable for one family. It wouldn't be overly large, but it would be suitable for a good-sized family. I don't think you get too many people sharing it.
So we'd spend $25,000 so that 4 or 5 people could be under a sunshade. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. We do have the Dundome close by.
I'm not worried about the Dundome. I'm worried about spending $25,000 for 4 people to be under a sunshade. Why can't we get just the cheaper sunshades and you get a whole bunch of them and get more than 4 people under them, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm off base, but it just seems like an awful lot of money for a small sunshade that fits 4 people or whatever a normal family is. If that's what you're saying, but maybe I've misunderstood.
Well, you may get a few more people, but I just don't know how often you'd have different people crowding each other to get under a small area. They are expensive for a proper sunshade that can withstand a few seasons. The cheaper ones, I believe, just don't cut it. There'd be a short-term fix, and ultimately we would be into a proper sunshade of this price range. And I believe that's where we will be. If we put up the cheaper ones, we may just be the maintenance and costs of putting it up and the short lifespan. We might just be into a more expensive one. If we were going to do it, I suggest that we do a proper one.
So would this be like 8 by 10 or something, David?
Maybe a little bit bigger than that. But not by much, with steel posts and.
Okay.
Yeah, so they'd be, and then once it's in place, it's in place, and then they're high tension wire with a canvas on top.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment on this?
Sure.
Back when I was on recreation, which was back quite a while now, and back before the playground and all that was really beyond its infancy, there was discussion of doing seating areas and doing work underneath the back of the pavilion, which runs a long distance along there. And if the trail, the accessibility trail or path has to be out in the yard, I'm wondering if we could have that revisited and look at it again for consideration of sitting and shade areas under the back of the pavilion, just still looking down toward the beach and out into the playground area type thing, versus individual structure type shade thing. This is the first I've heard of this type of a shade structure being considered there. So maybe it just needs to be rethought a bit. See where we go from here.
Okay, thank you. What was the accessibility path to the play area? That again is a fairly large item. Where exactly does this path go on?
So this would be a carryover from last year, and that would be a pathway from the parking lot to the play set that's in place. And then
Okay, was it in the budget last year at $20,000?
Mr. Mayor, I think it was, and I think it goes back even a couple of years to when Councillor Deacon was on council. That was all part of the playground, and I thought there was some, again, from an accessibility standpoint and the act and everything, you got to let people get over there, right? And I thought that was part of the initial playground, structure. But I know Kathy, my wife, was involved on that committee. She's not here right now, but staff could certainly reach out to her. And, well, I think Michelle or the CAO may know the history here, but I agree with Councillor McEwen. By the way, I think if you combine the two things and made a path, and you've also got the dock going in there, right? So I don't know what could be done if we said you've got $45,000 to play there. I'm sure that some nice stuff could be done in terms of a pathway or whatever from the new dock, over towards, behind the back of the Dundome, and providing shade and a path or a walkway or whatever it's called. So, I think we can do it, right? So, and make it look very nice and serve a lot of purposes.
Okay, well, maybe we need to take those under advisement a bit and see what the best solution is. Anyway, are there other questions about the things that we've covered already on this?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Yeah, go ahead.
Under the landfill section, converting the sea cans into the attendance sheds. I honestly don't see why would we even consider this. Those sheds that are there, they were only built a couple of years ago. I don't understand why we would go through the exercise of disconnecting all the hydro, take out the heaters, the air conditioners, the point of sale system, the camera systems, to convert it all into a sea can that we just bought for storage. When the sheds, there's nothing wrong with those sheds structurally. I mean, if somebody doesn't like the way that they look, I mean, we could spend some money and put some vinyl siding on them and make them look a little bit nicer rather than a paint job, but structurally, there should be absolutely nothing wrong with those sheds for a good number of years.
Okay. Any response from staff?
I'm open to making them look better. That was my initial goal, was to working on the whole look of the landfill, and I do believe that will reflect in the behavior of our ratepayers. If we can get something that looks tidy and well kept, then people that do attend will take care and respect our landfill. So we can look at putting siding, cleaning up our existing office.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't think they look that bad. And I think we put up other sheds, didn't we, for the bottles up there? Aren't they wood?
Yeah, they have siding, but yeah.
Oh, they have, is it wood or vinyl? Sorry.
It's vinyl.
Oh, it is vinyl. Okay, good. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, I kind of agree with Councillor Woods here. I don't see them as looking that bad. I certainly don't see us moving all that stuff, and the cameras are set up, the air conditioning, the heating, and that sort of thing. And I just don't see spending $12,000 to put sea containers so that it looks a little better. I mean, we should be able to get them. I don't even think they need siding this year. Maybe in a year or two they do, but I guess if you want to do it, then let's see what the cost of the siding is. I don't, not that much, I guess. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Gorham-Matthews.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment as well. I had circled that item as well, that, I don't see any issue with the attendance sheds at this point. I think if we're going to spend $12,000 at the landfill, we should be focusing on items that are going to extend the life of the landfill. That's people's priority right now, is wanting to see us do projects that will extend the life of the landfill. So if we want to divert that $12,000 into a project like that, I would support that. But, this just seems like some busy work, spending money on moving everything into a sea container when we could be doing something more meaningful at the landfill with that money.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I guess that takes us then to the last 4 items that are here. I don't know if our CAO clerk wants to talk about these or
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll certainly get started, and I'll invite other folks to join me when I need them. The first is the municipal office facility renovation. This project was conceived because of COVID, and what we found when we realized that we really couldn't be 6 feet apart within the office area, we put some protocols in place, and the discussion revolved around, if we did expand the office, what would it look like, and how do we build for the future? And there was a little team of people put together, Mayor Comrie, myself, and Councillor Woods. Tyler was meant to be part of the team, and he still will be, but he wasn't able to attend the meetings that we had. We went ahead and did some work with an architect to try and envision what the project would look like, and we worked on some options. And we have a drawing that looks like the office is expanding, and we got some estimates. The estimate was probably closer to $650,000, but that's without finalizing anything. So it was of a high level design, so I bumped it up to 700 just for the purposes of discussion, because when you have an estimate one year, you know that prices are going to change the next year. And if council wanted to proceed, just like any large project, if you decide to move forward, then we fine tune the estimates, we fine tune what the project would actually look like. So that's why you're seeing that item in the budget for discussion. The nursing station item is the $80,000 this year and the $620,000 next year is based on a financing plan that was conceived. The $80,000 would go into reserves, and the $620 would be what would be spent in 2022, with hopefully some $100,000 in ISIP funding, some money that the hospital already has in their foundation, some more fundraising, and some contributions from our neighbors. And all that hasn't been worked out yet. However, in regard to the nursing station, I know there's been some questions as to the reason why the square footage started out at 1,500 and was reduced to 1,000. And I did send out a document that Marcella shared with us. And I'm still on the line. Are you still there, Marcella?
Is she muted?
Yes, I am.
Oh, hello. Thank you for waiting.
Sorry, I was on mute and I couldn't get it unmuted for some reason. I'm here.
I understand. I don't know if you'd like to share anything else. And similar, well, I'll just say one more thing. Similar to the municipal office, the dollar amount is based on the best available information we have in terms of the design. It doesn't include any furnishings or furniture or equipment. It's really just the build. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Marcella. I'm sure you have a few more things you'd like to say.
Well, I wasn't actually planning to say anything. I just want to say we've really appreciated your support so far in this process. And if there's any way that I can provide more information to help you make a good decision on this, I'm more than happy to do so. That's why I'm here today.
Thank you, Marcella. The next item is a small dollar amount. It's the library pathway improvements, and this is something I noticed when I was doing the project management for the expansion of the library. There's a concrete walkway out front, and there's a concrete landing, I guess, at the bottom of the ramp at the back of the building. Both of them need to be repaired. One needs the front needs to be expanded and realigned to the new steps, and the concrete pad at the back is tipped the wrong way. It's tipped toward the building, so it just needs to be lifted. This $5,000 is really materials. Our staff will be doing the work if council agrees to, and I don't think that's discretionary. I think that's a necessity for the safety of that building. And the library water system is something that Dave's been looking into, and I'll turn over the podium, I guess, to Dave if he'd like to speak to that.
Thank you, Michelle. The existing water system at the library, when we did go to start it back up, I guess I was told this by the staff that it wasn't going to happen. We did have the water healer come in to look at, see if we can get that booted up for us. And at the time, they recommended it be condemned. There's no way to get that going. It was recommended that we pull the water from the secondary treated water from the community center. We have a good system at the community center, and we pull it across the road and provide the library with good water. The existing water that comes out of the ground there at the library is full of, I don't know how to describe it, better than a sludge, an iron sludge that just covers everything. It covers our UV lenses, it covers all of our filtration equipment, and it's just, it's not manageable. It's just not a manageable water to work with and provide clean water. We did have a posted advisory on our water for high sodium content, and that was existing at the library prior to any renovations. And if we did bring the water across from the community center, that water would lift that advisory, and it would then become potable water, and we would not have a posted drinking water advisory on. So the health unit supports this action of bringing the water from the community center. It would be primary, secondary treated water, and we do have a permit to go under Highway 124. We would also be using the same contractor to put a second discharge hose or discharge pipe under the highway that would accommodate our sump pump from the library. When the addition was done, we did hit groundwater, a substantial amount of groundwater, and that comes from our foundation. So around our foundation, our weepers, all that water from the weepers does come back into the hole inside the library and then is pumped just outside the library. It does run down the hill right to the 124. And from that point, it runs down the 124 to the catch basin, down by the bridge, the Narrows. In the wintertime, we've had to maintain that in a fair amount of maintenance and work to trying to maintain all the ice buildup from that discharge hose come down the highway and cause issues for the neighbors. We've had a few complaints many complaints from the neighbors regarding the discharge hose, and this would solve it. So boring under the highway would run a discharge hose for our sump pump. Would also provide potable water for the library, and we considered putting another line in as a electrical line for the generator at the community center that would run the discharge hose. It would run the discharge pump, that sump pump. It would run it as a backup pump if the power went out. We would be able to power that. We're looking into doing that as well. And that would be covered under this project. And permits are in place. Any questions regarding?
Any questions about the two projects? Like, what are we talking about? The nurses station, the expansion to the office? Like, there's a ton of questions, right? That's a big chunk of change, and I've got all kinds of questions, but I don't know whether this is the proper time to ask them. What's the size that you're looking at in terms of the office expansion? I don't know that. Is it 1,000 square feet? Is it, I don't know. I take it it's bumping out the rock towards the nurses station and expanding out that way.
Yes, it's 1,081 square foot addition, bumped out towards the nursing station. The tower would come down. It's not utilized anyway. There'd be a bit of blasting to create a couple of extra offices past where Pat and I now sit, reconfiguring the front area and a storage, relocating the copier room. It's actually a drawing I can share with everyone now, if they're interested. I know Councillor Woods and the Mayor have seen it and been posted on the wall in the office, but I can send that out to everyone if they have interest in what it might look like if it was expanded.
And Marcella, I notice, and I'm all for the nurses station. I'm all for having employees in the proper space too. So I'm just not that I'm against that, but I noticed, part of the thing was, well, there's meeting rooms in the library and that kind of stuff, and then you moved some stuff downstairs, and immediately I started thinking about two or three things. First of all, would the downstairs be handicap accessible if you're having meetings and that sort of thing? For instance, would there be the requirement for an elevator? Secondly, as I said before, part of the sell in all of this, the council and everyone else, is what are the services that we're contemplating bringing out? Like, I don't know whether it's I take it it's physiotherapy or whatever. Can we get a list of what's envisioned at the nurses station? I don't know. Was there a traveling dentist coming out once a week, or like, we don't know the answers to that, right? And not that it's just for information within the community, given that we're being asked, in the area of 600,000-700,000, right? And so those are just top line sort of concerns not concerns, but questions that I would have. So, anyway, those two projects, if I may, Mr. Mayor, since I have the floor, to be honest, you know, in city building or town building or village building, I think, you know, kind of go big or go home. We have all kinds of needs in our municipality. I was around 10 years ago on council when we built too small of an office building. So I think if you want to beat me up for it, I was part of council at that time. But it was different circumstances. There was mold and stuff and anyway. So we built it too small. So, you know, I have questions, is this big enough? Is 1,000 square feet big enough? We need to build not for 10 years. We need to build for 20 or 25 years. And the same with the nurses station. You know, is there envisioned in the future you have kind of a regional health center of some sort in Dunchurch, which I'd love to have, and is that big enough to house such a thing, or bring dentists in, or that sort of thing, right? And I guess when I'm thinking at these two projects of $1.5 million or whatever, quite frankly, I'm looking at, there's a property right next door that's for sale, okay? It's up, so I publicly can talk about it. And I really truthfully believe something like 4 acres, it's got 70 feet on the water, and we've got parking problems on Church Street. If we were ever to even entertain sort of looking at acquiring that, there's all kinds of things we could do. Staff could perhaps go to the nurses station. Maybe the hitching post or the old one could be renovated or made into a health center. We talked earlier about the thrift shop in Maple Island. You know, where will the thrift shop go eventually? We've got to think long term. I was at it 10 years ago, and we should have thought, we didn't have the time, but we should have thought more long term. And we need to think long term now, not short term, because if we do, we'll suffer for it in the end. And I envision a beautiful area where everyone could park. We don't need, if people go to the beach, they'll have room for them to park there, not you know, full of cars from employees and other things. So enough on that, but that's what I believe we should be looking at, and not piecemealing it bit by bit, you know. So anyway, I throw that out there to council. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Go ahead.
I agree with where Councillor Lamb was going with that. I know myself and you and Michelle Hendry in our meetings, I mentioned that about the property next to us there and purchasing that and how much it could help us in future development of all of our municipal buildings and services that we offer right in town center there. I've talked to pretty much everybody on council about this, I believe, one time or another. And I think for us to be able to buy that property and try and utilize that amount of space would be absolutely amazing for the municipality moving forward in the future. We could do so much with that amount of property there. If it could be renovated and the nursing station put in there, I mean, it is a pretty large building. And it would have been built to commercial standards because it was a restaurant. There's a heck of a lot of regulations when it comes involved to building a restaurant. It probably would need completely gutted and done over on the inside, but at least if the structure was sound, it could be a workable option. We could offer a lot more parking. I had a pretty good discussion with Councillor Gorham Matthews, and she brought up a pretty interesting fact that we had wanted to, or we're looking at some point, adding some outdoor fitness equipment, kind of like they had in Magnetawan. And if we would have had that property there, and if the nursing station potentially could go in there, we could put equipment like that outside there. And I know, Mr. Mayor, I've told you more than once, we've had this discussion that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, anything we could buy on that side of the highway, either end of the properties that we own, we should look at seriously trying to buy as much of that property as we can and have more green space and more workable area that we own.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments. I've been party to some of these discussions as well, and I think it's something that we should be considering. And I just want to say personally, I'm echoing the view that people have that we should look for the long term. You'll recall, I think, that when we first started talking about expansion of both the office and the nursing station, the first step that we took was to take a look at the property that we had and try to determine, the limitations that we had on the property and whether we had enough space to maybe we might have an immediate requirement for a certain amount of space, and then we would discover that, if we take a short-term view, we're good, but 5 or 10 years down the road, we're looking at expanding again, and all of a sudden we're locked in. And as has been noted in the past, the buildings that we have on the property we own right now were not sort of put there where they are as part of a master plan. They were put there where, and I'm including the LCBO in that, which isn't our building, of course, but it's our property. And so they, said, oh yeah, here's a good space, just put it here. The only problem with that is that it does put constraints on where you can expand in various directions. And it looks like there's more property there than there really is, because behind the municipal office and fire hall complex, and also behind the nursing station, there are septic beds. And those septic beds are obviously, they could be moved, but they're obviously in the way of expansion in certain directions. So what we have at the moment is we have plans that that take into account the property that we own right now. But I don't think there's anything to stop us from investigating further the property next door to see what it could be used for, and what the limitations would be on it. And anyway, that's as far as I'll go with that. I think those are. I'm just agreeing with the comments that have just been made. I was happy to hear them, to be honest with you. I don't know what we can do at this stage of the game. I would suggest to you that we do need to have more info. I would suggest we have to do a couple of things. The first thing is we have to get more information about into everybody's hands about what is being proposed and why it's necessary. And in the case of the nursing station, of course, there are some interesting possibilities for additional services and so on that could be offered, and I think those should be put out there. I think the other thing that we need to do is we need to take a look at whether there are any other sources of funding that might be accessible to us for projects like this. There is, as you'll see in the handout, there is some funding, some safe restart funding and so on, but whether there are any other opportunities, we keep hearing announcements about various sources of funds for different projects, and there may be some other things that we could do to mitigate the cost to the municipality itself for some of these things. So those are two things that we probably need to do, and maybe what we will end up having to do for 2021 in approving the budget is to put aside a certain amount of money to allow us to certainly to explore opportunities and to try to firm up the details of what's possible and to get some actual options in front of us. So anyway, I don't know. Are there any other? This is kind of a preliminary pass that we're making through the budget. So are there any other comments that people would like to make?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to weigh in on this one just for a moment, if I could.
Sure.
On the nursing station, since I've been the council rep on the committee. The committee itself going back a couple of years now, has been trying to plan their way into a new facility, which is going from, I guess, a nursing station to a nurse practitioner type facility, which it will be. It actually is now. Not recognized as well as it could be yet, but it's getting there more all the time. The nursing station itself, it's run by the West Prairie Sound Health Center. They dictate what programs go in. They supply the funding and programming and set the programs in place. So it's not something like, oh, the community like this or the community wouldn't necessarily like that. It's certainly taken into consideration, but it's under the auspices of sort of costs and available staff and programmers available to do things that we can do out here and give us the best that we can for the dollar framework, and certainly the facility is a big part of it, thus an expansion being considered. I don't know what I can say more than they did consider other possibilities, like if this location, that's why we had a feasibility study, if the location itself wasn't suitable to provide a facility sized to look after the healthcare side of it. And beyond that, we get lots of suggestions, and we've had discussions internally too. Well, oh, why don't we have a pharmacy? Why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? Maybe we should have extra space put there for other future operation. When we looked at even going to the 1,500 square feet and modifying the existing building, my gosh, we were up in the $1 million range. And the committee itself, and then our ad hoc committee, didn't want to come back to council with $1 million for an expansion for the healthcare side of it on the nursing station. So we had the committee, the nursing station committee, go back to the West Prairie Sound Health Center and look at programming, and I guess we were looking at more wishes than we were necessarily total needs at that time. Well, that's when we went back to 1,000 square feet. Now the whole thing was in sync with trying to provide the health care that we need out here, and that's where the basement came in as well. Like the basement giving another 1,000 square feet, we were able to put certain services down there that don't require handicap business and attention at this point. So going back to 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet in that range behind the existing building, it's affording us the opportunity to provide those services and not reaching out too far community-wise. If council wishes to go that direction, great. But I hope it doesn't, create roadblocks that slow us down and stop the program in its tracks. We've already got application for a grant. We've got safe start money of $105,000. There's near $120,000 raised by the nursing station itself. So it's a good distance along the way, and now we're hoping to start our outreach, and we're starting to get information on going for assistance from communities, either in the terms of just straight assistance from municipalities or going out to ratepayers in those municipalities for assistance. And we're feeling pretty good about what we're told we can probably shoot for in that direction. If we're going to a whole different concept and facility and a bigger overall project base, I guess we'd better get something together, and I would hope fairly soon, because the stuff that's come down and we're working on now for the nursing station itself is like 2021, 2022 project base. I can see us pushing it away beyond that unless we really get some organization together on this. So anyway, the assistance and the cooperation of the municipality so far has been just over the top great. I appreciate it. I'm sure the committee does as well. So anyway, just some comments on it from the nursing station sort of perspective. I know going big is great. If we can go bigger on the amount of property and look at expanding and have a room for expansion in the future, all that kind of thing, I don't know if we're just at that stage yet, at a ready to go point, move forward with a major change in the direction of this project. I'll just leave it at that. And we can think about it, I guess, coming into the next budget meeting and so on. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are there other comments? I certainly do want to express appreciation to the committee for very quickly looking at the at possible reconfiguration of the space that we had, and I think there was, they made a very serious effort to see if better use of the space could be made in such a way that the total cost, which at this stage, as you can appreciate, is estimated on a per square foot basis. So the number of square feet that you want to add times the sort of standard projected cost is what you end up with. But there are anyway, and they did do a great job of getting the costs down to the numbers that you see in front of you. It's simply a case of whether or not we want to go bigger, and if we do, I think we need to make sure that we know how we're going to do that. It could also be done in stages. It doesn't all have to be done in one mega project either. But anyway, are there other comments about capital? I see that we've been going about 3 hours or so. There are some other attachments that were provided here that provide detail about various things on the budget, and I don't know if anybody has questions they want to raise on them or other comments that they want to make about any of the, again, the subjects like what we have in reserves and those kinds of things that would help our staff to make whatever refinements they're going to make between now and the 15th. Anybody else have anything they want to raise?
I'm just looking, Mr. Mayor, just hold on. Nope, I'm okay as far as me.
Okay, councilors, anybody else?
Leaving the meeting.
Sarah Cook, Perry Sound, North Star.
Okay, well, if there is if there is nothing for the moment, I guess we don't need to keep folks on the line. We can move on here. But if you do have, if there are things that occur to you, or you think of something that's been missed out of here that you thought should be there, or you have questions of staff about some details that occur to you on looking it over, please don't hesitate to raise them offline, and we will proceed to try to get the rest of the missing details and so on arranged for the meeting on the 15th. Could I get a motion then for us to reconvene into out of committee of the whole into a regular meeting, please?
I'll move. Councilor McEwen.
I heard Councilor McEwen, and was that Councilor Woods?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Moved by Councilor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Woods, that we reconvene to regular council meeting at, I have 4:40 p.m. Is there any objection to that? Hearing none, I will declare the motion carried. So I do have a motion, which is, I'll read it to you, that Council of the Municipality Whitestone hereby receives report FIN 2021-02 for information purposes, and that staff be requested to it says make the following amendments to the 2021 draft budget, but let's say Council be requested to revise the 2021 draft budget as per the discussion. I'll just put here as per discussion. And the next budget meeting be scheduled for, this is the third part of it, for March 15th, 2021. Would somebody move that motion, please?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you.
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Any discussion? Any opposition to the motion?
When?
On the 15th.
Yeah, it's going to come back on the 15th. Yeah.
Okay, so it's carried. That brings us then to there is an item on questions questions from the public. Are there any questions from the public related to the budget discussion? Going once? To be honest, I'm not sure how many people there are from, other than the councillors and staff who are still on the call, but anyway, if there are none, we'll so note. And we can then take a motion for a confirming bylaw.
I'll move, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Seconded by?
I'll second, Councillor Lamb.
By Councillor Lamb. Thank you very much. I'm assuming nobody's objecting to that. And finally, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
At 4:44
Leaving the meeting.
p.m.
Doug Hickey.
Councillor Gorham Matthews, seconded by?
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods, thank you. And I will assume again that there's no objection to that motion. Thank you very much, folks, for your hard work today.
Leaving the meeting.
Stay warm, stay safe.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for
Hi.
the hard work,
Night.
everybody. Have a good day.
Bye now.
Leaving the meeting.
Steve Creaser.
Leaving the meeting.
Marcella Scholdice.
Leaving the meeting.
Joe McEwen.
Councillor Gore Matthews.
Leaving the meeting.
Councillor Woods.
Leaving the meeting.
Patricia Allen.
Leave.